This video is on proofs. I'm going to be speaking specifically about paragraph and flowchart proofs. Now, whenever we write a paragraph or a flowchart proof, I also will use a two-column proof so that I can make it. However, you do not need a two-column proof to be able to create a paragraph or a flowchart proof. A paragraph proof is basically just saying everything in a two-column proof, just in sentences. And a flowchart proof is just, again, taking everything from a two-column proof, but putting them in the order that they go in. As in, normally in a two-column proof, we always put our givens first. But in a flowchart, you still write your givens on one side. It's going to be boxes and it's going to flow together. It'll be kind of like a graphic organizer. But what you do is make sure that if there are words in here, if there are bisect or midpoint, you want to make sure that they go together, and so it leads to one thing. So on our two-column proof, so this first proof is telling us our givens, and it asks us to prove triangles are congruent. Now this is just normal. We always prove triangles congruent, no matter what. So as always, in a two-column proof, we always write our givens. Now there are no numbers on here, so that means we don't know how many statements there are, so we have to determine that. So our first statement, as always, will be our givens. So angle YLF is congruent to angle YRF, and our first reason, make sure you number them, is because it's given. So I have it in my proof. I need to mark it in my picture. So it's an angle, so it will be an arc. YLF. So here's our L. YLF. So this has one arc on it. Is congruent to angle YRF. So from Y to R to F. So R is up here, so this will have one arc on it. Now, it's in my proof. It's marked congruent. It says it's congruent, so I can put a check mark on it. I still put my check marks on my givens. My next statement, since I still have another given, I'm going to write that. So angle RFY is congruent to angle LFY. For reason 2, it's given, because it was given. So angle RFY. RFY. So F here. F is where we want it, but it's in this triangle. So it's an angle, so it'll have arcs. I'm going to use 2 arcs here. And then it says angle LFY. So L to FY. So it's in this triangle. It's at F, so I'm going to have 2 arcs here. Now it's in my proof. It's marked on my picture. It says it's congruent, so I can put a check mark here. That means I'm done with my givens. But I only have 2 statements, and I only have 2 things congruent. So that means I need to find my third by looking at the picture. So if we go back and look at the picture, because that's all we have from our given. There's no words in our given, so we go straight to our picture. In our picture, we can see that the triangles are actually touching at this entire segment right here. So that should automatically tell us we're going to have reflexive properties. So for reason 3, we should go ahead and put reflexive property. Now all we got to do is save the statement. So we know reflexive property will say either 2 segments are congruent or 2 angles are congruent. This was a segment. They touch at that line. So we need to say that this segment is congruent to itself, basically. So how do we name it? So we always start with one triangle. So if I cover up this bottom triangle, if I just start from Y to F, segment Y to F, I have no arcs to 2 arcs. So I'd say segment YF is congruent to, so if I cover up this top triangle, again, it went from no arcs to 2 arcs. Cover up this top triangle, I want the same line from no arcs to 2. So this one has no arcs, it's again the letter Y. So Y to F as well. So segment YF is congruent to segment YF because of reflexive property. Now we have 3 things. So now to look at what we have. This first one is an angle, so I'm going to put an A. The second one is an angle, so I'm going to put an A. And this third one is a segment, so I'm going to put an S. As always, this does not necessarily tell us the order of them, but it does tell us that we have 2 angles and a side. So we need to know, is the side touching one marked angle or both marked angles? So come up to this picture. This side, again, if I cover up this triangle, this side, if I were to outline it, will touch only one of the marked angles, because it's not going to touch this one up here. It'll only touch this marked angle right here. So it's only touching one angle. That means we have our two angles, and our side is only touching one of the A's. So that one will be angle, angle, side. If I cover up this triangle, I'm going to do the same thing. Does this side touch just one of the marked angles or both of them? This side, if I were to outline it, only touches this set of arcs. So that's only touching one. So I have two angles, and that side is only touching one of the A's. So these are both angle, angle, side. That means that we can prove the triangle is congruent. So if we look at our triangle, it says we stop at prove triangles congruent. So once we have the triangles are congruent, we can stop. We don't have to go any further. So statement 4 will actually be our final statement because that's what it's asking us to prove. It says prove that triangle FRY is congruent to triangle FLY. And the reason behind that was angle, angle, side. So this is our two-column proof. We have proven the triangle is congruent. So since we've proven the triangle is congruent, we can actually go and write other proofs. So I'm going to take my two-column proof and write a paragraph and a flowchart proof. So the paragraph proof is just writing everything in words. The first thing we have are the givens. I don't want to say given this, I'm going to say let. So in a paragraph proof, all my givens, I'm going to say into one statement. I'm going to say let. Let. Let angle, I have to write it out in words because it is a paragraph. We're going to use words. Let angle YLF be congruent to angle YRF. And, because we also had the second given, that's our first given. Our second given is in the same sentence because I'm saying let. That's basically telling me that it's given. An angle RFY be congruent to angle LFY. I'm not using symbols here because it's a paragraph, so it should be written in words. So those are all of our givens. Those are all of our givens. Now is when we actually prove something. We have to then prove that these two segments were congruent because of reflexive property. So all we do is just state that in words. So we can say that segment YF is congruent to segment YF. You can say because of or due to. Yeah, so because of the reflexive property. I'm going to write out the entire word for property. And it's technically the property of congruent, so I need to write out the entire thing. Property of congruence. Because that's how we know that they're congruent, because it reflects the property of congruence. So that was that statement. Now we can actually go to our final part. So we can say in conclusion, or therefore, or we can say anything that marks it as a conclusion. So I'm going to use the word therefore. Therefore, triangles, so I'm going to say the triangles, FRY and FLY. So this said triangles, plural. I'm saying the two different triangles. Instead of saying the triangle FRY and triangle FLY, I'm saying, therefore, triangles FRY and FLY are congruent by. Now, I am using AAS, which is just angle, angle, side, so I can say AAS, because those are still letters. So therefore, the triangles are congruent by AAS, angle, angle, side, which is basically the exact same thing we have up here. That's a paragraph proof. It's just saying everything we've already said, but just in words. Now, the flowchart proof is, again, taking everything we have from up here and just putting it into more of a graphic organizer. So this is when we have boxes. Now, flowchart proofs, we always put our givens on together, as in together on the same line. So I'm going to use boxes, and I'm just going to make it go to the right. I'm going to make it flow to the right-hand side. You can make it flow down if that makes more sense to you, but I always have it flowing to the left. So I have two givens. That means I'm going to have two boxes over on the left-hand side. Two boxes. So those are my givens. These have to stay in the same line, that vertical line, or you can have them both going to the right. If you're going to have them flow down, they just need to be in the same line. So inside of here, inside of these two boxes, I'm going to put the statements. I'm going to put the statements. The statements are in the boxes. So the first statement was angle YLF is congruent to angle YRF. And then the second statement was angle RFY is congruent to angle LFY. Now, we put the reason underneath the box. So like right here, right underneath the box. The reason for this was because it was given. I'm going to use the same colors I had earlier. So this one was given and this one was given. Now, because these were checked off, I actually stop at these givens for right now. Because this doesn't necessarily lead to anything else. So it's not going to lead to something else being congruent or like a bisect or anything like that. So what I do is I go to my next statement. My next statement and reason. Now this was not given to us, but it did not happen because of the givens. So that's what we have to think about. Is it happening because of the givens or not? Reflexive property is kind of all on its own. So I'm not going to put it on the far left side with the givens, but I'm also not going to say, oh, well, these map to something else. That reflexive property is kind of on its own, but it's not a given. So I'm going to put it slightly to the right-hand side, but not directly connected to the givens. So inside of that box, again, I'm going to put my statement. So YF is congruent to segment YF. And the reasons underneath, I'm going to put reflexive property. Now, we have our three statements and our three reasons. Now, all of this, all three of these finally led to that the triangles were congruent. So how do we draw that? I know finally that this was the angle, this is an angle, and this was a side. All three of these we needed to prove the triangles congruent. So all three of these lead to the fact that the triangles are congruent. So how I do this is I draw from each of these boxes, I draw arrows to lead to a final statement. Our final statement is led to from all three of these statements. So this is our final box because all three of these lead to this one final box. That statement was that triangle FRY was congruent to triangle FLY, and the reason was angle, angle, side. So what a flowchart proof does is it literally shows you what leads to what. So the given was one of the angles, this given was that was one of the angles, and the reflexive property gave us the side. So we are leading to our final proof, or our final statement. So everything leads to it. So a flowchart proof is just a graphic organizer of how to actually see it. If our given had led to something else being congruent, it would have another arrow. And I'll do another example of that on the next video.